Um, so just like some of you have seen this with Postgres, or sorry, with like Snowflake, or with Postgres, or a lot of different things. Um, you can create different roles, right, that have different permissions, right? So, for example, say you have like, say I want someone on the dev team to just have access to certain services. You can do that through this IAM service, right? And this is identity and access management. So when you think about it, it actually is a pretty good name because, right, identity sounds like logging into stuff, right? And then access, right? So like users and what they can access. So let's click on this and we can just kind of work through this. So I guess this is the service that authenticates. Actually, what I want to do is click on users and then click on add a user. I'm surprised it doesn't have a user found. Yeah. Let's click on add user. Okay, so I can then, is this what I want to do? Sorry about this, gang. I think so. It just looks a little different, and I just did this earlier today, so I don't know what my deal is. Choose your identity source, authentication, enable. It's fine. I think I should just be able to go to users. Let's see if I can do this. Add a user. I'll just do like. Let's see. Am I going to the right thing, Taylor? Or what I want to do is like be able to then to create a different role and then be able to add permissions to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think you create the user, you can assign the policies after that.
Okay. All right. I guess I'll start to do that.
They're constantly updating their UIs though, so
I know. Let me click on. I have it in the. Let me just make sure I have the same. I'm going to the same link.
Yeah.
So I said you can go to IAM by clicking here. So let's go here. This is more what I was thinking about. I don't know what so I guess I went to IAM version 2 home/home. And this link is available in the reading that I'll deploy. So here, now I want to create, let's go to here, users. This is what I was expecting. Okay. Okay, so you can see I created like various users. And now I'll click on add a new one. All right, and we'll do like the username. Just call this like lecture 1. I'll make this a little bigger. I do want to provide user access to the AWS Management Console. And then once I do that, you can do this specify a user in the identity center, which is kind of a cool thing. It kind of like works like with GitHub permissions. Just like with GitHub, you can kind of like I can invite you all to a repository, but we don't need to go into that detail right now. Instead, we'll just say I want to create an IAM user. I'll put in a custom password, and then users must create a new password. I don't need to do that, right? This would be, say, if I'm like the admin and I'm giving you like a employee or something like that access to this account. I think this is fine. So I'll just use my own password. Then we'll do next. And now here's the net kind of key thing is what permissions do I want to give to the user? All right. So say like everyone on the dev team gets the same set of permissions. Like maybe they get certain database access and they get, access to certain like computers in the cloud, like called EC2 machines. You might have like a group, right, that we can just give them make them a member of this group and therefore they get these permissions. For us, we'll do attach policies directly, okay? So you can see there's all these different policies. This is what am I giving you access to? Which services in AWS are we giving you access to? And maybe there's just like Postgres. Probably listed as RDS maybe. RDS access, which is their word more or less for Postgres or really any database. And you can see you could give like full access to the database if that's what you want to do. In our case, we'll just essentially give full access to everything, which is administrator access. All right, because this is for us, for our, so it makes sense. So we can do that. So all we did was we just filled out the username, clicked on next, and then we selected this thing for attach policies directly, and then we did administrator access from there. Then we'll click on next here. Then we can click on create user. What I do, there's one more thing. Here's another way they kind of change stuff. So this is our user. Let's go back to the user list. That's fine. I know the password. So we just created this lecture 1 thing. What I wanted to do from there is add, here it is, security credentials. Okay? So you can we can log in to AWS through the website, but you can also get essentially like API keys to also access and manage your AWS services. Okay, so to get those API keys, that you click on security credentials. So what I did was, here's my users panel. You can see that my user is listed here. So now I'm clicking on that user. And then I'm going over to security credentials. And then here, this is what I was looking for. Create an access key, right? Just like an API. All right, so I'm going to click on create an access key. And then they ask me, why am I doing it? Because it's going to try to convince me not to do it. So I'll just say, I want to do it for the command line interface. And it says, please use this stuff. And I'm like, okay, I don't care for right now. Okay, and if you want to, you can set a description value, but we don't need to. All right, so like you can see, this works just like the API, all right? Because I get an access key, like my username, basically like your user login, and then this is the password here. Now, why is something like this useful? Because what you can do is you can use a pip library called AWS CLI. So I say, here's how you can install AWS CLI. And you can see I'm actually already, after you install it, you do like pip3 install AWS CLI, and then this, just copy and paste this. So you can see I already have it, pip3 list AWS CLI, or it should be there. Right, and then if I type AWS CLI, sorry, I think I just typed AWS, my bad. If I type AWS, I'm connected. This is what you'll see, but you're going to want to connect this CLI, right, this command line interface, to your account. And the way you can do that is by typing AWS configure. All right, so now you can notice I've already put mine in, but look what it's asking for, the AWS access key. All right, and that I get from here. You can also download it as a CSV file if you want it for safekeeping, because I don't think it will show you. See, it says if you lose or forget this, you cannot retrieve it. You have to just create a new one. So that's why it lets you download it. So I can copy and paste this, and then I can copy this without showing you it. Oops. Oh well. I'm sorry. And then do this, and then do this. All right. So now that I did that, I've basically logged in, and I'll have to delete this later. So I've logged into my AWS, and then I'll do, if I do, what's the next command? AWS IAM list users, just to show you that this is connected to my account. I do AWS IAM list users, and you see this? These are the users, dev access 1, right? The various users that I've created. And you can see that here, right? Dev access 1, Docker app, right? So now you can see this console, what's on my computer is connected to my AWS account. All right? We've just effectively, now we have an API to my personal, to that AWS. Okay, so this is how we sign up for AWS. Why do we want to use AWS, right? Like always, like the question, like why? Well, I mean, cloud computing in general, one thing you probably know about it is, well, one, if we want to like host a website, we can't just use our own personal laptop because well, we want to close our laptop at some point, at which point our users can't access our website. Another reason is it scales with us. So we can, just have kind of a website that has a pretty small hard drive and we don't really need much storage. And then we can just upgrade that storage as we want to. If we want to be able to handle more requests, maybe we need to create more CPU. That way, we can handle more requests. And again, we can scale that as our website scales. So being able to like scale as we go and then scale down as we need less, right? That's really valuable. And then of course, like, things like the security, like managing your security, we'll move through those features, but that's obviously easier like with a professional service. Cool. All right, so this is like the signing up for AWS part. This is the first thing that you all would do. The next thing that we'll do, I'll probably take you through this later, is going to be actually creating like a computer or creating access to a computer on AWS. All right, so I guess I'll just deploy the reading on that for now. And that'll be this EC2 overview. And then I'll deploy this section. So these two sections you can get started on. All right, and then we'll pick it up from there. So far we're basically just covering the sign up, and then from there we'll do this component, do this section about like explaining some of the services in AWS. Okay, this is something else. We'll go back to AWS. So the first thing is just understanding like the nomenclature of AWS land. All right. So in general, what are we like building up to in this next section? We want to take our Flask application and instead of having it run on our like local laptop, we want to ultimately deploy this on the cloud, right? On an AWS machine. In order to do that, right, AWS is going to introduce us to like a couple of different terms. These are the generic terms. Like these are words that you may have heard before. Probably you have. And then we'll see like the AWS terms that they start using. So first is just like an IP address. As you know, this is like the string of digits that where your website will live, right? Like all websites have this. The analogy I oftentimes give is, ESPN.com, like there is some sort of string of digits associated with this. And the analogy I normally give is, like nowadays when you want to call someone, you just click the button on their name, right, on your iPhone or whatever it is. And then underneath that dials an actual phone number. It's the same thing on the internet, right? We go to ESPN.com because we don't want to remember the string of digits. But underneath, that's what's happening. And that's the IP address. So obviously like a browser or, we can make a curl request. We access the IP address, but and from there we get to the server, right? By the server, we just mean the computer that hosts our website, or it could be anything that we're trying to access. It could be a database or whatever, but it's a computer, okay? And what controls access to the server is the firewall. And this can control access by specifying who is allowed to access it, by saying only people from this region are allowed to access it, or only laptops with this specific IP address is allowed to access it, because every device connected to the internet will have an IP address. So it can indicate, hey, I only want my laptop connected, right now to be able to access, and not other people's, or people only from this building, right? If you own run a company, and we only want people from the office to be able to connect to, say, the company intranet or something like that, right? So the firewall can have these different rules as to which computers are allowed to access it, and also what kind of access. Like they could get like web access, as we'll see, like HTTP access or HTTPS access, or what we'll see like SSH access as well, meaning like connect to the bash terminal on the computer in the cloud. All right, so here you can set different rules as to who can access the computer and how they can access the computer. Then we have the hard drive, right? This is the storage just like disk storage, just so you can plug in an external hard drive to your computer. Same thing. And then there's the SSH key. This is the login, right? It consists of a public key and a private key. Again, you can think of just like a key to your house, right? Like or whatever you're staying in. So right, like I walk into my apartment, the lock is public. Everyone can touch and whatever, rub their fingers along the little keyhole thing. But the key itself, that's in my pocket, right? That's the private key. So it's going to be the same thing here, right? Like the lock is going to be stored on the server and it's called the public key, but the access to it, right? The actual key that you use to open it, that will be stored on your laptop, okay? And that's the private key. So both components need to be created, the public key that's on the computer and the private key that's on your laptop, but you just have the private key that fits into the public key. All right. So anyway, this is kind of like the generic terminology that essentially all services will be using. But then, yeah, AWS uses this terminology. So IP address is the same. When it says security group, that means firewall. Okay, that's the set of policies saying who can access it and how can they access it. Instead of server, they say EC2 instance, right? And that's just a computer in the cloud. I think now they do more. I don't know. I was on the website today and I didn't see Elastic Block Storage, but that used to be what it was called. The hard drive was like EBS, which just stands for Elastic Block Storage. And then key pair. Right, same thing. Like the SSH key is just called a key pair, right? The public key and the private key. Okay. So this is just like the terms that, I don't know, that you learn and that they refer to. I don't know why they don't choose the generic terms, but they don't. So, okay. So now let's like sign up and start creating a computer or getting access to one in the cloud. You can do this a couple different ways. You can go to EC2, just type in EC2 here. You can click on, let's see if I just click on the cloud thing. So you can see it has my recently used services. Here's EC2 here. Then down here, this is what the reading tells you to do, is click on launch a virtual machine, right? So we can just click on this. And it says it should only take 2 minutes, which is nice. Again, I'll just call this like lecture 1. And then now here are the steps. They've automated a lot of these steps. It turns out the defaults all work fine. But we should walk through them. So the analogy I give in the reading or the scenario is essentially just think about what you need to do when you walk into Best Buy to buy a computer, right? It's a similar process. The first decision you might make is, like, do you want to buy a Mac or a Windows machine, right? What software are you looking for in terms of the type of computer? So here we're saying Amazon Linux, right? You can see here it says this AMI. The AMI stands for Amazon Machine Image, and this is like a preset like configuration of software installed, right? So like Amazon has like this set of Linux software installed on the computer, and you can just choose that. Or Amazon also has like this a version of Mac that you can choose, or a version of Windows, right? So the first thing is you can choose what software do you want on your machine. We'll see, we're always choosing the free tier eligible, right? This works fine. This 2023 AMI, right? And it's just a Linux machine. So this is the software, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is the hardware. So that's this instance type. And again, we're basically just choosing the free tier eligible. You can see that these are the hardware specifications. So 1 CPU, right? 1 gigabyte of memory, right? You're just going into Best Buy and specifying what you need. All right. So you don't get a bunch. If you pay some money, right, you can get 4 gigs of memory and 2 CPUs, right? Just like you would expect. So again, the default so far works fine for us. So far we chose the software with the AMI, and then we chose the hardware. And then here's that key pair login, right, that I talked about. So, right, like we're going to want the public key and the private key. So it will generate, that's why it says like a pair, right? The lock, the actual like lock, and then the key itself. So I have some existing, but for you all, we'll walk through just create a key pair. .pen file, that's the one I always use. I think most people would use. And then you want to give it a name. So we'll say lecture 1. And then do create key pair. Notice what it does is it immediately gives me, this is the private key. All right, it's just a file, and it has a bunch of like text in it. It's just a long generated string for you, and we'll see how to use that a little bit later. And then the network settings, there's create a security group. Everything here is fine. Remember, the security group is our firewall, and it specifies who is allowed to access the computer and how they are allowed to access it. So remember I said there's different ways. We'll learn more about this later. But like we are allowing SSH traffic, right? We're allowing us to access effectively the terminal on the computer. We are not clicking the boxes yet for allowing HTTP access. When would we want to do that? When we have like Flask running and we want somebody to be able to like make a request from their browser to our computer. These zeros means that I'm not restricting which IP addresses can access the computer. Again, like there's a more detailed reading that we can go through that later. But the defaults end up being fine so far. We want to allow SSH traffic from anywhere. Okay? You're still going to need your PEM. It's not like you all can just access my machine because you still need the PEM file in order to access it. But I'm not putting an extra level of restriction saying even if you get my PEM file, you still can't access it because I'm limiting it just to my IP address. I'm saying anyone can do that, and that's fine for now. Next thing is like how much storage do you want? You get up to 30 gigs, so might as well. You don't need to, but it's fine. And then we can click launch instance. All right, so here you see the summary. Right, we're launching one instance. You see the AMI that's chosen, the hardware, right, the security group, and the volume. What's the difference between using a PEM file? I think it might just be the encryption, but I don't know. The question is, what's the difference between using a PEM file and a normal SSH key? Does anyone know? I just use the PEM file in order to access, to like get SSH access.
Yeah, I'm more asking just like, does it make a difference if we use one or the other, or is it preferred to use PEM file in general?
I think, well, historically they only used to let you, they would only let you create a PEM file. So that's why that's what I just do. But I don't, it used to be the only option, so I never really thought too deeply about it. So from here we can click launch instance. So this is, right, actually like setting up those different things. We can, if you like, immediately click on this, right, we can then go to that instance. The other thing you can do is just go back to your EC2 dashboard, right? And now you can see, because I was doing this before class, I now have 2 instances running, right? Meaning 2 EC2 machines. Let's see, it may tell me, oh, launch time. There we go. This one was later? Yeah. So I guess this is the one. No. I wonder if I have 3 running now. Hold on, let me refresh. Oh yeah, I have 3. I really should do better. Okay, so I have 3 running. This is the one, you can see it's initializing, right? Let's click on this. And we can probably, I can show you this. Yeah, well, let's just click on this. I'll show you how to shut them down later. So you see they get an instance ID. Oh, let me click on the chat. Okay, a PEM file is a general, let's read this from Taylor. A PEM file is a general file format used to store cryptographic keys and certificates, while an SSH key is a specific type of PEM file used for SSH authentication. Okay. PEM file can contain various types of data, while an SSH key always consists of a private and public keys used for authentication. Okay, so I'm guessing PEM-file in general is like encrypted. Is that right? And then the SSH
Just
key.
more, yeah, just more a more general. It has more general use cases where the SSH key is just for SSH. So it's just like a type of PEM. It's just kind of semantics.
Sure. So this is used for SSH access, but we're using a PEM file as our SSH key.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. All right. So this is booting up. And then let's refresh. Okay. So we can click on this, and then this is like details effectively about our EC2 instance, the one that we just created. You can see here's the IP address, right? We cannot access it this way, I don't think, because we did not give HTTP access, right? So we probably can't access this. Other thing that's like useful to see is security, all right? Because remember, this is the firewall, right? So lots of times you'll have issues if you're like, I can't access my machine. Normally it's something to do with your security group. So, what we did was we were at our EC2 dashboard, and then we clicked on our relevant EC2 machine, and then we scroll down, you click on security. From here, you get to security groups, okay? And I want... Is this still? Oh, here you go. See this is the inbound rules, meaning this is what's allowing like my laptop, right, or your laptop or whoever's. These are the rules how we can access the EC2 machine. How can someone reach into this EC2 machine? And so far you can see that there's just one way, which is SSH access, right? Meaning access it through like the command line, right? And you can see anyone can do this. Or any computer as long as they have the PEM file, and on port 22. That's just the port that Bash is running on. Just like the same way that we saw with Flask, it's running on port 5000, I believe, right? You can change these. Like if you see this as, say the source isn't right, or maybe you don't have SSH access in general, you can change this by clicking on, edit inbound rules. Let me just go back. So you click on this, edit inbound rules. And then from here, you can do like add rule. Or you can say, hey, I don't want everyone to access this. So you can, click X on this and then save the rule. All right. So for us, the default is fine, but there probably are going to be cases where eventually we're going to have to update this. By the way, there's also outbound rules, meaning like can your EC2 machine hit external APIs or scrape a web page or whatever. By default, it just allows you to access any web page. It's not too dangerous to restrict that. So it just says by default, hey, we can access anything. All right. Okay. So then the next thing we might want to do is connect to our EC2 machine, like log into it. Let's go back. Here's the specific one that we just created. You can do that by clicking on connect. And then Kumar just showed me that this EC2 instance connect thing is pretty cool. It allows us, it like kind of creates a terminal in the UI. And this is like our machine. And we could, mess around with it and connect to it. But the way I've always done it is through the SSH client, and it's probably better to be able to do this. So a couple of things you'll have to do. One, you can see it says, okay, open an SSH client. Okay, Bash works fine for this, right? Then it says the next thing we should do is locate your private key. That's this guy, right? So I can show in Finder, and then you can move this into like the SSH folder. You probably should. Let's just go to cd /.sh. So this is the folder, and we can move this PEM file into there. cp-a this. All right. This file, like I said, it just has If I do head, you'll be able to see the first few lines of it, right? It's just a long string, okay, of random text. So what do we want to do now? The next thing we need to do is you have to, they want to make sure that someone can't like hack into your computer and like get this PEM file. All right. So in order to do this, to make sure that your key is not publicly viewable, you have to run this command against your PEM file. All right. So that's chmod 400 lecture1.pem. Mine, this just happens to be the name of my file. So this will probably change, but that worked, right? And then finally, this is the IP address. So now what am I saying? We want to SSH using this PEM file, right, as the EC2 user, just like when you log into your Mac, right, you specify the user. It's the same thing here to this IP address. So this is the IP address, all right? So now we can do this. And I'm just going to type in yes. And now we're in, okay? So, right, we're in this is currently connected to our instance that we just created. Okay, so if we create touch foobar.txt, that should be here. Right, because this is connecting to the same thing. Right, okay. So this is, we can now, you can create files directly. Ultimately, we're going to want to like move a Flask application to the, to our machine. Okay, and we can exit out. Just you have to remember like where you are. So right now we're still connected to our machine. So we can just do exit, right? And we're good. We're out of it now. I think I can, as long as I have this in the SSH folder, I think I can type that command from anywhere and it'll find it. Oh, I guess I'm wrong. Nope, I'm lying. We can figure that out. Unless someone knows a quick fix. So I guess I'm just gonna be where that file is for now. Which for me I put it in // SSH. Yep. /.ssh. tilde/.ssh.
You can provide full path, Jeff.
So what can I do?
Provide the full path of that .pem.
Yeah, that's true too, right? We can probably like specify the full path as to where it's located. Right here. That would work. Okay, so that's the main thing, right? Like how to create